Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I'm Pastor Joe Fox. Let's talk a little bit about conflict, armed conflict in a post-apocalyptic world, right? I think most people are familiar with the idea, the concept that if somebody is killed in a group, they just fall over dead. Um, that in some ways is better than if they're wounded, because if they're wounded, it actually takes more people out of the fight, right? People have to evacuate them from the battlefield, and then when they get back to the rear, whatever their version of the rear is, away from the battlefield, then it's going to draw people from their group to care for them. It's going to take supplies to care for them, which then diminishes the supplies the group has, that kind of thing. And so we were discussing this on my forums, and somebody asked, "Hey, how do we avoid this?" And their theory was for every one person injured, it takes 7 people to care for them. Whatever. How do we avoid this? And I think there's basically 3 ways. That just came to mind this morning while I was sitting here. And the first one, to avoid having to pull off many of your members to deal with one of your injured members, is to avoid conflict, right? And I get a lot of people who don't know me on YouTube when I say things like, the three ways to deal with martial law are run away from it, deal with it, or fight it. They're like, "You're a coward." Dude, that's one of 3 ways, right? But one way to avoid getting people injured is to avoid conflict. Now, how do you avoid conflict? And I'm talking armed conflict here, right? People shooting at you and you having to shoot back. One way is positioning yourself and your group in an area where it is unlikely that you are going to have to engage in armed conflict, or where it is significantly less likely that you're going to have to engage in armed conflict. And so that requires pre-thought on your side. Another way to avoid conflict, yes, is run away. Run away and live to fight another day. You have to pick your battles. If you don't want to get shot, don't start shooting at people. As my wife says, don't start no stuff, won't be no stuff, And so that is an option sometimes, to run away. It certainly helps you to avoid conflict, at least the immediate conflict. And then another way to avoid conflict is to develop a defensive posture, a defensive attitude that intimidates would-be foes. Make yourself appear, and that doesn't mean you're not, just make yourself appear to be sort of this undefeatable entity, or an entity that they just don't want to tangle with, because there's much weaker entities that these people can go tangle with, instead of messing with you. And so if you actually develop this defensive posture, it doesn't have to be fake. Like, it can be real. That's the best form of intimidation, when you can actually back up what you're putting out. So the first way to avoid this whole mess of getting people injured is to avoid conflict. The second way, check this out, is don't get injured. Right? Now that sounds simple. That's easy to say, but how do you not get injured? Well, one way is, if this fight is coming and we're involved in this fight, how do you not get injured? Which means develop now, superior tactics, have superior weaponry to any potential foe that you're going to deal with, so that when that one shot rings out, assuming that first shot doesn't hit you, you're able to respond in such a way that the problem goes away, one way or another. Another way to not get injured in a fight is to preempt the fight. If the fight is coming, there's no sense absorbing the first blow. You're going to have to shoot it. Oh boy, did we just hear that recently somewhere? We're not going to fire the first shot. Let me tell you something. If I think a fight's coming, I will fire the first shot. I'll fire the first 80 shots. If we're going to dance, let's dance, right? And that's a way not to get injured. Seize the initiative is what we used to call that in the military. And then another way to not get injured in a fight, if you will, is to be in the best physical shape that you can be in. Get in the best physical shape you can get in now. Again, here I go again, over to the latest televised militia type people. You know, if you're grossly overweight and you can't run across the compound carrying a rucksack and a rifle, you're not in physical condition to fight. Right? So get in shape. I like CrossFit. You know, there's many other ways to get in shape. I've got lots of videos on it here. But if you think a fight's coming, get in shape. It will prevent you from getting injured. Even when bullets aren't flying, it will prevent you from getting injured when you have to do heavy things, move things, do things fast, stuff like that. So to avoid getting injured, get in shape. And then the third point, because the first point was avoid conflict. The second one was don't get injured. The third way to avoid this whole concept of, you know, taking out 7 of your people to take care of 1 wounded person is to minimize any injuries that do occur. So, you know, because stuff happens, right? People are going to get injured. It could be you. So all of your people, you should have the highest level of first aid training that you can get. You know, you should know how to deal with injuries, and then everybody should have the materials with which to take proper immediate first aid type actions. I remember when I first came in the Army, they issued us this little pouch, little snap pouch, and it would go on our LCE. And you know, they would tell you to wear it upside down, and there would be a first aid dressing in it. It was basically like a big thick maxi pad with long tails of material on it, so you could put it on a wound and wrap it around and tie it off. And they said put it on upside down so you can just pop it and get it out right away. And then other people were like, yeah, no, because when you're low crawling, if it's on upside down, the pocket opens and it falls out. Another video for another time, perhaps. I went to Special Forces in the early days, you know, for me, and we were really high speed because we put 2 dressings in our pouches because there's an entrance wound and an exit wound. And then now, if you look what soldiers are carrying, right, the IFAC, the individual first aid kit, much better, right? Much bigger, a little heavier, but much better. But the bottom line is have the materials at hand that you can deal with injury, and then have people trained, you know, to the highest level that you can. And maybe, yes, you could still have your squad medic, but the squad medic could be over there pinned down by fire while you're sitting here with a hole in your body that you have to deal with. And so be able to do that. Another way to minimize injuries, have an evacuation plan. What is your plan for when somebody in your group you know, sustains a serious injury? How are you going to get them off the battlefield and to the rear? You know, whatever that is, to a safer area, because, you know, we're not doing long-term care while bullets are whizzing over our head. And the quicker you get them to a facility, again, you know, that is what it is, but the quicker you get them out of the dirt and the mud and into some kind of place where you can care for them, the more efficiently you do that, the less the injury will be. You know, you'll minimize the extent of damage if you can start treating it quickly. So have an evac plan. And then, quite frankly, and a lot of people don't do this, you need to develop a midterm, because, you know, immediate care is battle first aid, right? But then you have to have a midterm plan and a long-term care plan for people who are injured. And then you have to have the supplies and the facilities to be able to handle that. Most people aren't even close to that. Most people aren't thinking about that. But maybe you should start thinking about that now. What are we going to do if Sally takes a round through the shoulder? How are we going to deal with her? Because she's not just going to bounce back and start milking goats tomorrow morning. And so avoid conflict. I gave you some ways to do that. Don't get injured. I gave you some ways to do that. And then have a plan to minimize the injuries that do occur. These are some ways that you can mitigate the effects of being injured, or in fact maybe stop it altogether, prevent it altogether, and thus not diminish your group's ability to do other things because they're all now taking care of an injured member. You know, the words weren't quite as smooth as I wanted, but I hope you can get something out of that video. If you like it, tell me and share it. All right, I'll see you out there. Woo! Bye-bye.